And dear colleagues, we are thankful to all who decided to attend this event despite the bad weather. We're happy to welcome you the traditional discussion of intermediary results of the reforms in energy and environment sector. I'm Anton Antonenko. I'm representing DiXi Group think tank, and together with my colleagues, we have been carrying out the EU supported project aimed at strengthening public awareness about implementation of reforms in the energy sector and environmental sector as well. 3 months had passed from the moment of our latest discussion on the progress of reforms in the areas of interest in Ukraine. As of today, we have prepared our analytical materials based on benchmarking, reflecting our vision of the situation as of the moment. Each section in this report is presented by the experts in each sector, in each subsector, and I suggest to start from the gas subsector. I'm pleased to introduce Roman Nitsovych from the DiXi Group. Thank you, Anton. The gas issue rises each time when the IMF mission is visiting Kiev, and of course, the issue of gas market reform is currently important from the gas price point of view. The government had been postponing this decision many times, and finally this year it will make decision on October 1st. When the government will pass amendments to important regulation, the gas price will be established automatically based on the procurement gas price. The next and separate issue is the prices on central heating, and which very much depends on the local heating suppliers, and in this case, we can have a situation when the gas heating companies will be supplied at a raised price, while the heating will be supplied to consumers at lower special prices, and this again may result in a situation in big areas in payments and in a big gap in prices, and this requires a bit time for adjustment of all parts of the businesses. At the same time, the final decision of the government about gas prices will be made on October 1st, which leaves not so much time for the heating producers to fill the gap, to buy cheaper gas to get ready to the winter season. On the other hand, the energy community Secretariat had registered one more case against Ukraine. It has not started it, but not filed it, but it has registered this file about absent competition at the gas market, and the inability to change gas supplier in Ukraine, for example, if any consumer wants to do this. As of now, we have 12 such cases of free choice of suppliers, but I would like to see that miracle. As for unbundling of Naftogaz, it also is not working properly as of now. In mass media, I've saw some reports that by 1920, the gas transportation company will remain inside Naftogaz, and only afterwards the unbundling will take place. I believe that this was the reason why the internal investor had stopped funding of this project, as far as I know. I believe that this jeopardizes our implementation of the association agreement. The next difficulties which we have registered we have seen the cut downs in gas supplies in early August, and this meant that austerity measures in terms of gas supplies were imposed upon industrial consumers, which lasted for a very short period, but 5 days, but nevertheless it happened. Then we observed that up to 40% of the market is covered by competition, and this competition has been growing. The biggest competitors of NAK Naftogaz are not just only Ukrainian companies, but also companies which are rep offices of international traders in Ukraine. I think that's a good trend. Having observed such fundamental gas sector, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Holikova, who is independent expert on electricity, and Ms. Holikova also participated in the selection commission for NERC members nomination. Anton has mentioned NERC, and in this connection I would like to mention that this week we will have 100 days of the new membership of NERC work, but unfortunately the NERC is working not in full membership. We have some members who were not approved by the commission, by other commission members, and the case was brought to court, and some some candidates to positions in NERC, they are now subject to closed court proceedings, and we do not even know what's going behind the closed doors. As for Mr. Wovka, he never appeared in court. He submitted a request to change the judge, and we believe that this is done intentionally to hinder the process, and that this is not the right way of behavior. But nevertheless, NERC operations continue. Recently, it had passed a package of regulations which are required for implementation of the electricity market, and they believe that this is almost 88% of those regulations which had to be passed for proper functioning of the market. And also, this is the cabinet of ministers who contributes to the slowdown of this process because they do not pass necessary regulations on time. And also such thing as financial component, passage of the law about liquidation of financial indebtedness, of debts, of the cross subsidies, and about non-payments and arrears in Donetsk and in occupied Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. But good news are that around 24, Oblenergo has fulfilled unbundling process, and probably many consumers had already received new bills from new suppliers, which is a result of that unbundling process. Only some companies like Cherkasy, Oblenergo, which has not applied unbundling, and one or two more companies which are mainly state companies. Thus, new supply companies has got licenses to has got licenses for universal, so to say, services. So officially and formally, everything is done, but the issue is how they will work for the sake and benefit of consumers. Another issue which we expect to become even sharper in winter is to how apply this new electricity market regulations in the territories of Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, in the territories which are controlled by Ukrainian government, but which are subject to very special regulations. Luhansk Oblast electricity subdivision is the big data, and now we are thinking about the establishment of special commission which will discuss how we can find the way out from this situation. I believe that maybe the situation should be resolved first at the political level. So there should be a political decision with the subsequent amendments to current laws. The next issue is issues of our technical integration to the NCE system. We have heard several signals which we felt to be rather hazardous. This was about energy breach between Energoatom and Poland, and I'm not sure that everything is going smoothly. Recently, I've heard that Moldova has decided to make its own energy bridge of direct current, not alternate current. While we had to integrate to the NCE jointly with Moldova. So this brings in a lot of technical aspects, a lot of technical issues. which impose questions to our engineers and managers, and it looks like the application of energy package is going on at the formal level, while at practical level, so many empty spots remain. Thank you, Svitlana. Let me give the floor to Denis Nazarenko from DiXi Group. This is the expert who deals with energy efficiency and social issues. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. In the energy efficiency, the situation is not such optimistic. The scores this time are much lower than in the previous release of our reports, of our reviews, and for the first time of our participation in the energy community, the Energy Community Secretariat has filed the case about Ukraine's non-fulfillment of Directive number 37. When it comes to transposition of some legislation, we have put rather high scores. During last 2-3 months, the Ministry of the Regions and the Cabinet of Ministers intensified their work with legislation. They published them, they raise public awareness in this area, but the experts point out to insufficient quality of the documents, about methodology, how the saved energy is calculated, etc. Also, the Eco Design Project law also offers some optimism. What is the most engraving? Non-transparency or sometimes absence of public information about implementation of energy efficiency measures. For example, the Prime Minister's plan imposed on the Ministry of the Regions a task to update public about implementation of energy efficiency. But when we requested such a review, we have got 30 pages document with no practical hints, with no serious analysis based on calculations. Then in July, the final procedure for using the data of electric meters and other energy consumption meters was passed, and which means that all those figures which were mentioned by the government in the previous period, they were not supported by real figures. About Then about subsidies and new rules of market and services supply for consumers. Then gas prices are also very closely interrelated with this issue of housing sector. Another issue is about energy efficiency fund. This is about so-called warm credits, warm loans. Although much money were allocated, but actually not so much money came to consumers. Both our analysis, RPR, and some other NGOs had submitted a letter to the Cabinet of Ministers pointing out that those condominium which are already users of the or clients of the warm credits program, they are different stages in the warm house program implementation, and now they need 72 million of funding from the state resources, which are now suspended, and this discredits the program itself, etc. Also, we monitor a possibility for consumers to change suppliers of gas or electricity, and we saw no such cases. That's why you saw 0 in both entries. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia Andrusevych from the Society and Environment Resource Center. Dear colleagues, when it comes to environment, and look at the benchmarking figures during last 6 months, we can observe some positive changes. When we look at the previous reporting period, we see 33 points, while in the previous period there was something like 22. But now I would like to point out the most slow moving, slow changing, and slow improving aspects in the environment and renewable energy sector. In our analysis, we look at the speed of approximation of legislation. And also we assess practical implementation of those improved regulations. It's quite useful because you can pass good regulations and not implement them. When it comes to approximation of legislation, we clearly see the law on Ukraine about strategic environmental assessment, and while the law about general environmental or preliminary environmental assessment was passed during the previous reporting period. The latter document allows to implement a directive about participation of NGOs in discussion of environmental and energy aspects. As for the national plan, cutting down emissions from combustion sources also was passed, and I think this is extremely positive step. The association implementation plan had stopped actually our implementation of some separate directives, which in theory could be passed. That is, we made nothing to implement the directive about atmospheric air. Also, we lack a special law about protection of wild birds. And the law about emerald border would not resolve this issue fully. Another negative issue is that a case about sulfur compound emissions filed by the European Energy Community. When we look at the laws which were already passed and try to understand their implementation, we can see some positive steps. Comprehensive register on the environmental impact is already launched, although the portal works in test mode, and when ordinary people wanted to find some information in that register, it's not so easy to do. Especially when people try to find something before public hearings. We encourage the authorities to improve this registers, this resource. Another negative thing is that the law about strategic environmental assessment is not fully operational due to lacking secondary legislation, but the authorities assured us that very soon they will approve secondary legislation and the law will become effective. Thus, in general, we can see some improvements in some aspects, which only points out that we have a lot to do, like protection of wild birds, cutting down the emissions from big combustion installations, atmospheric air, etc. Thank you, Natalia. Now I would like to give the floor to business climate sector, and we have Oleksandra Humeniuk, who is representative.
Good afternoon. Thank you, dear colleagues, for your expert opinion. And I would like to speak about business climate and investment attraction. So compared with the previous periods, if we compare statistics, investment attraction improved, and the biggest capital investment were aimed at energy sphere, to the oil sphere, extraction and gas supply. So analyzing the changes that were introduced and the draft laws that were registered and the laws that came into being, all this improved business climate. Speaking about legislation, we should note the laws that were adopted: the law on privatization, on currency, the law of Ukraine on the LTDs. So if we are speaking about privatization, according to the law, now it is more easier, and there is increased transparency. So the objects are divided into big and small objects of privatization now. So they are privatized on the e-platforms that are transparent. If I'm not mistaken, in June, the first small objects for privatization were launched. So also about big privatization objects, they prepared 10 big energy entities. Now they have procedural stages. In accordance with the new law on privatization, you can find more information on the site of the Fund of State Property. The law of Ukrainian currency that was also introduced this year, it deregulates the currency circulation in the country, and it improves business, and it attracts investment from foreign companies also. We should take into account the draft laws that were registered. This is the draft law on concession that makes the market more transparent, and it helps to attract investment in the budget infrastructure. So this is a public and private partnership establishment, and also long-awaited draft law, the draft law on the tax on the capital that envisages the introduction of changes to the tax law of Ukraine, and sometime there will be, they won't use this term, the tax on profit, and only this profit that goes out of the enterprise, it will remain, and the capital that will remain in this enterprise, it won't be taxed. So there are some delays in the investment attraction. So this is too much regulation and many procedures, and the time that is spent to get some licenses and to get connections. I represent Ukrainian and European Energy Agency, and we directly cooperate with companies that build electrical plants, and we see difficulties in connection and communication with Ukrenergo, and non-transparency and too much regulation. And now and as we know, the law on electricity market was adopted, and the Article 121 is now in operation, and there will be a code for connection that will be developed, and the regulator developed it, and it is coordinated with the energy community, and the regulator says that this code of connection and more transparent procedures, they will put information about this law on the site. So now we do not have the text, and we didn't see the draft or the concept of this code of connection, but we expect it in the nearest future. And also, I would like to share about the projects of energy efficiency in the budget sector. We communicate not only with the companies, not only with generators of the energy, but also with those who implement projects in the sphere of energy efficiency. So there's such a problematic issue because there is too long procedures to prepare those projects. And it is not only about heating for kindergartens, but also this is about the supply of the energy to bigger facilities. So the procedure takes 3 years, and this is too long. And this preparation sometimes lasts for 6 years. So our colleagues, they divided this procedures on cycles, and they saw that there are 10 sectors in this preparation, 10 parts. So, and they used all the resources in order to communicate with the stakeholders, with municipalities that develop the projects, and the Ministry of Finance, and where they should, and the Ministry of the Regional Development also participates. So there are many state institutions that, according to the law, should coordinate these projects of energy efficiency. And because of lack of coordination or sometimes bureaucracy, this process is too long. And now we are working on this problem. So this is one of the elements that somewhat delay the processes of introduction of the big investment projects. Thank you, Oleksandra. Dear colleagues, now we're going to have the opportunity to speak with you. We are ready for discussion. We are happy to discuss those issues that we've presented here. Please. Vika Elchenko. I have a question to Oleksandra about the recent remark about loan preparation of the projects. This is are you speaking about ESCO projects or other projects as well? So this is not about ESCO contracts. This is about energy efficiency projects and the budget sphere of about municipal facilities for state money. Thank you. I can add here about ESCO contracts. They have their problems, but as practice shows, those municipalities who are really interested in the projects, they do not have such barriers where unlike in those cases when people do not want to implement them. This sector is efficiently developed, and here this is one of the examples of success if we are speaking about energy efficiency. Thank you, dear colleagues. Do you have other questions, please? Thank you. I have a question to Svitlana. Oksana Sarchuk, the voice of Donbas, you said, you didn't say about Donbas Energo. Is the situation is critical? We would like to specify this. Thank you for your question. Donbas Energo and Leo, they work now and they have debt, and the issue of Leo, the issue is difficult because big debts are accumulated for the previous periods, and we got information that there is big outflow of workers. They have problems with their employees, and this is the problem of the biggest part of the Obelenерgo and also in the western oblasts in Khmelnytsky. And you know that recently the regulator took decision to increase the component of the salary and the tariff about 10%. So Obelenерgo said that they cannot increase the salary, and there is an outflow of specialists because tariffs are regulated, and the salaries, they are the part of the investment component and also of the tariff component. So there is such an algorithm. Obelenерgo do not provide 100% payment, and there can be a zero algorithm. Like in Cherkas Obelenерgo, there was big debt of and they didn't get they didn't get money in time, these enterprises. So also there is a problem of management of the company, and they didn't have money to pay salaries. So this was zero type algorithm. So the Lugansk, Leo, and Donetsk, they faced the same situation. They still hold, but they are not in good condition. And the problem with winter period, in the winter period, this problem will even deteriorate. This problem is known, and only by common effort of the regulator, the government, the ministry, this issue can be resolved. Thank you. Other questions? Modelis Ukraine company, I would like to put a question about the conflict of Ukrenergo and Obelenерgo, and how this issue is resolved, how this issue can be positively resolved. Let me answer. So this debt before Naftogaz and the formation of the new structure. So there are three parts in this debt. First, the body of the debt. So this is the indebtedness of the consumers for the supplied energy. Second part is the difference in tariffs, about 700 million hryvnias, and the decision should be taken on this by the Supreme Council. And the third part, these are fines by Naftogaz for the body of the credit, so this can be regulated by the government. So now we do not see the wish to resolve it in Kiev, and Kiev Council do not want to allocate this money. So this will be done by Verkhovna Rada. So these bodies, they now are responsible for the fate of this debt. So the first component, the non-payments. So this will be the task of Kiev Tepleenergo to work with those who have debts and somehow to regulate those issues. So if two other components are resolved, so this debt will be decreased, and then they will speak with Naftogaz to restore energy supply. So before the start of the season, they should regulate this issue. Otherwise, there will be some electoral consequences, and we know that this is a powerful stimulus to adopt some decisions. Thank you very much. So one more question. Natalka Prodka, Gladcom, to Svitlana. Tell us, please, so how many times Mr. Vovk won't come to the session of the court, and how this issue can be resolved finally. So as a lawyer, I believe there's some issues concerning delay. These issues are exhausted, and now there's an issue of recuse of the judge, because according to the code, this petition about the recuse of the judge, it should be considered by other judge, and he should decide whether this is legal. And the representative of the entities, they said that we do not agree with such petition, that the judge should be recused because she considered the cases connected with the regulator. So this is a weird argument, because first of all, Vovk in this case is present like a physical person, not like a member, and the contest commission do not direct relation to the regulator. We are a separate body. Once again, I stress that this is the sphere of moral responsibility of the person, how the person position himself, what he wants to, whether he wants to reach justice. And to establish whether this decision of the Commission was right, was fair. But this attitude towards this case, if a person wants to achieve justice, he should attend the court hearing. So we want to make some legal steps, and we want to consider this case in essence, or to make a declaration that this case will remain without consideration if he doesn't come. So Mr. Gaidachenko forms the procedure, not Mr. Vovk, and he works on this commission. So everyone said that the implementation of directives is in delay. So what will be the consequences of this? So the case was started, and what will happen to the sphere, to the sector, with the entity, if these will not be implemented timely? About the cases on export against Ukraine, export of electricity, these are long cases. The Secretariat of the Energy Community also started a case because procedures of expert procedures were not transparent enough, and this case lasts for 3 years, and there are so maybe there were no penalties against Ukraine. This case is ongoing, and Secretariat understands that we have some limitations in order to implement all the conditions, and the Bushten Island that works in the limited regime, and we integrate the whole system of Ukraine, and these issues will be simplified. So this is also about professional and moral responsibility for implementation of requirements. And I believe this is about all the cases. Maybe my colleagues will add something. I would like to add that this is also about the money. Maybe not directly, because the progress in reforms, it is connected with macrofinancial help. The less we do, the less we have the right for this support. We know about our negotiations with IMF, and the government took obligations, and if these programs are not implemented, there won't be any cooperation, and it means that the trust to Ukraine from international creditors this trust will decrease. So these days, the Prime Minister said about the consequences. The main word was default. So I won't dramatize the situation, but the cost of the money we will bring from outside, it will be much higher. And this emission of Eurobonds, the percentage was much higher than the same financing. If we unblocked this cooperation with the fund, so the market also suffers. If it is not open, there's no competition, everything is regulated, and business does not have the opportunity to earn, and the consumer is not able to choose the best supplier, not only according to price, but also according to quality of service. I would like to briefly add to the last remark of Roman. So the implementation of the agreement on association, it is beneficial for the country and for community and consumers, because for Europeans, it's not really important how we are going to live further. It is important for us how we are going to live. And this delay and unquality implementation, there should be electoral consequences. And we proved some time ago that we want to move along this way. And we, especially during this period of election, we should show that we continue to go along this way. Thank you very much for being with us today. And please attend our site, and we have update information, our monthly reports, our monitorings, and we present this information to you. And we thank Renaissance Foundation and the European Commission for